All right. Yep. Okay, you're up.
All right, good evening. This is the January 13th meeting of FinCom. Two primary agenda items tonight are the budget update from the Park and Rec Department and Community Education. We have a good representation here tonight from them. And our budget update from Bonnie and capital update associated with that. So without further ado, I'll ask the representatives here from PRCE.
Hi. Forgive me, I'm not feeling well, so I've written some remarks which I may end up reading rather than speaking contemporaneously, and I may give them to Ivan to read. So I want to start out with, as I'm sure most of you know, Kate's leaving at the end of the month. So we're going to look for a replacement both in-house and externally, and I've adjusted some of, our budget numbers to reflect some changes in what our payroll would be for the year. And I just wanted to start out with our mission statement, and this is the mission statement from 1990 that we updated to include adult community ed, but otherwise it's remained the same, that the department is a town-funded department that provides year-round high-quality indoor and outdoor recreation and enrichment activities for children and adults to increase the quality of life for residents. And as you guys know, it includes the day camps, sports camps, maintaining and managing the town sports programs, adult community ed, driver ed, maintaining the rec facilities, the parks in town, including Fay Park. We've done other community things, Third Thursdays, holiday helpers, Halloween parades. We do after school field trips on early release days to keep the kids out of the sub shop. And it's our belief that the mission was to provide programming which benefits the community as a whole and develops and maintains an overall sense of community within the town. And we also don't believe that access to participation should be based solely upon the ability to pay, which is basically where we're at now. If you can't pay, we don't have any programs for you to participate in. Under Kate's direction, the departments continue to strive to provide these programs in the face of diminished funding for the department and greater competition for taxpayer dollars from other local fees, including school athletic fees, transportation fees. And we've continually monitored and reviewed program enrollment, costs, and fees. Now, the commission itself, we've got more than 40 years' experience on this commission. We've got 5 or more, I don't even know anymore, staff members. And for them, it's their profession. It's not a job. It's not something they just come to. They're all professionals at it. They don't do it just for a paycheck. And to be honest, at the last meeting, it was rather insulting that it was inferred that we weren't picking programs that were profitable or would bring people in, that we didn't know how to program the department. And so at this point, regardless of whether Kate's leaving or not, we're kind of at a crossroads. We've asked for additional funding this year to continue with the higher paying programs like the camps, as well as the programs which benefit the town as a whole. We've done movies at the beach, we've done parades for the kids, and all of those things. And we're looking at probably a savings of about $22,000 this year between Kate's leaving and having to bring somebody in at a lower step, as well as having an open position for a period of time. So we've got that. So right now we're looking for, and it's a little different from what we had, but we're requesting $186,500 as an appropriation for FY16, which is an increase of $84,000 over FY15. And that includes covering the step increases, which are coming this year as well. Last time we were in, you said, well, you didn't provide us with a level staffing budget. Well, that was what we had provided you with. The directive hadn't been a level appropriation budget. So what we did was we provided a budget with which we could maintain a level staff. So based on the current funding, which was about $100,000 last year, we'd need to eliminate 1.5 staff persons. And so it's going to eliminate significant programming no matter where we go It's been commented that we always threaten to eliminate the programs that are most popular, like the holiday helpers and that, but those, to be honest, the reason we bring those up is those are the least funded. We have less fees for that. In fact, that one's straight overhead. Some of the field trips, again, lower fees for that, so that's what we'd eliminate. But we actually, at our last meeting, looked at what we would have to get rid of to cut, and it would begin with probably the broader-based community programs, and then possibly driver's ed, which we looked at, a profitable program. Eliminating adult community education, that's an option on the board. Closing some of the camps and closing the beach. Based on what we've got for costs and potential revenue, probably the greatest candidate for closing would be closing the beach. There's greater costs associated with that than there are revenues that we can bring in. So not providing lifeguards, not providing the maintenance at the at the beach anymore. At least one of our big programs is going to have to be cut at our current level of funding. And there's no two ways around it with losing 1.5 people. Conversely, the other option is to change the mission of the department and just have it become a section of the town that maintains fee-based programs for people that are willing to pay. And we don't do programming. We might keep adult community ed, but for the most part, it's for people that can pay, and you just change the job description and bring in an administrator to run certain programs. And then we could probably cut significant salary on that. We wouldn't need a big staff. We would just reduce it to the bare bones. And I don't know whether we'd be able to support the camps at that level because you need certain levels of expertise. So I think the final thing I wanted to bring up, and I've been bringing this up for the 10 years since I've been on the commission where we've been told that we're going to be cut back, is if in fact you want to change the mission of the department, and if you're going to do it through budgetary means, you got to come out and somebody's got to come say that. And we keep getting told you're going to have to cut back, you need to do this, you need to do that. That changes the mission, and we need that's not our prerogative. It's yours and the Board of Selectmen to say, you're right, we don't want, what we want for recreation in this town is somebody just to keep the fields clean and make sure there's sports going on. And I think that's about it. One of the other things you guys had asked for was some of the numbers from the past. Increases to our budget strictly based on the Personnel Committee changing what we had for salary, for example, for the seasonal employees and that, and for moving the driver's ed people, thank you, are over $11,000 in 1 year. So in fact, we went in, I think we went in this year, Kate, did we not, to the Personnel Committee, and they again felt our seasonal employee rates, which are based on other competing towns, were too low, and they got raised again.
They got raised for
The other thing is our total retirement contribution for the department, which is part of the additional $84,000 we're asking for, is $42,000 this year. So unlike every other department, we're having to make our retirement contribution, and that's a significant amount. In FY12 it was $24,000. This year it's going to be $42,000, in part based on the fact that some of these people got moved up and put on the schedule. So that's all I have for right now.
Did you have this discussion with the Board of Selectmen? I mean, in terms of policy and your mission and things like that, I mean, that's a discussion for the Board of Selectmen more than it is with us.
And they won't answer the question either. And I mean, I've been on this board, I'm due for re-election, so it's probably been 15 years. And every year it's the same thing, and the same non-response. So as much as I'm directing it at you, it's directed at that. Just come out and say it. And I think it's, I don't know, I'm due for re-election. I think it's gutless that they don't. And there you have it, so.
So just help me understand the last year's town appropriation, or town, appropriation was like, as I recall, was like 96,000?
It's 102.
102, okay, 102. And what you're asking for here is the 86, which is a delta of 84. The retirement is a hit of 18 of the 84. Right? Okay, so now we're down to 62. So what is the 62 made up? I mean, what is
Well,
the
he
60?
said another 10
40-some
for
odd thousand in
personnel.
retirement.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, retirement was 40-something thousand, right?
No, time up. They were paying 24, it went up to 42, a net of 18.
Okay. Well, didn't you
So-
say there was personnel changes too?
Well, that's what I'm
there's
asking.
step increases and the full weight of some health insurance
The
too.
personnel
So,
changes alluded to
That was like 10 grand or
from
something?
the Personnel Committee is all having to deal with regulations from the feds. We didn't want to raise those changes, make those changes, but we have to because the federal regulations require.
That's fine, but what is it? Is it 10 grand?
I thought it was, what'd you say? I thought you said.
I mean,
Well,
ballpark,
driver's
I'm
ed
just trying to
specifically
understand
was-
what the
driver's
pieces
ed
are.
specifically was like $8,700 because they used to be located on the temp schedule. And they were getting paid anywhere between the drivers between $15 and $18 an hour. And then when we did the salary study, or when the town did the salary study, and the consultant came in, they moved those people to Schedule A. And so they were placed on the lanes and steps and graded at a higher level. So now we're paying like $20 to $25. And the person that's running the program actually gets paid more an hour than the assistant director of the department, which we went back in and said, this can't be right, but that's what it is. So that person's hours were reduced. And then because they're on Schedule A, it tipped retirement contributions for all those persons. So that was an additional $7,000 right off the
But is
thing.
that a difference in FY15, or is it a difference for the FY16 that they're asking for? I'm trying to
It's
understand what
both,
the
because this is
84
this is the first year that we had the full weight of that.
So in 15,
Correct.
okay, so it's there now,
Yeah.
and,
Which we did come and have that conversation,
right.
both with the Board of Selectmen and with the Finance Committee
Right.
at this, basically around this time last year.
Right, but, I don't know, maybe, I can't make 1 + 1 add up to 2 here. What
There were
makes
some
up the
funds left over
62?
in the revolving account.
Okay.
There were reserves in the
Okay, so
revolving
we covered it
account,
with
which we
revolving.
used,
Okay.
spent down to cover.
Over the past 5 years, we've spent $137,000 of reserves to be able to make up the deficit.
Mhm.
Last year, when I came, I said, when this driver's ed thing goes through, that's it. We're gonna be out of reserves. And effective today, when I ran the report, we are out of reserves.
Okay,
So something has to change, and it already has internally. We're no longer giving scholarships for, people are calling and we don't have them. So to carry us through the rest of the year, my leaving is able to alleviate some of that for a bit, but next year,
Mhm.
we'll be kind of right back here, except for the differential in salary as, I'm a step 7 for 7 years of service versus someone that you bring in at a step 1, 2, or 3. But even that, it's sort of a Band-Aid, because hopefully
It's a
someone
short-
will stay, and then
Right.
they'll be at a 7 or an 8 again, and we're kind of back here. So it's sort of like this global policy decision, where it's like, even if someone doesn't come out and say it, with a lack of funding, it's sort of the decision is there, the writing's
Right.
on the wall.
No, absolutely, right. Okay,
But the revenue has changed as well, though, right?
I mean, we don't run any programs that don't run a profit. What I can say, the most succinct way to answer that is, when I first started, we had programs that would bring in about 10% over what it costs to run that program. And now, to meet all of the fees that we need to then build into those programs, it's somewhere between 35 and 42%. That's almost unheard of in the field, is to have whatever your program is plus 40% added on to be able to make up all salaries, retirement, IT stuff, office supplies. I mean, there's, electricity at the beach, water at the beach. I mean, these all, yeah, it's $1,000 here, it's $1,000 there, but combined over 5 or 6 years and multiple accounts and multiple seasons, this is where we're at. And so I, a couple of years ago, printed out, you know, all the things that used to be covered in other budgets. And then as people have their budgets cut, you know, they have to look at things that maybe don't necessarily, something they were doing as a service for another town department that they simply can't do anymore. And I don't fault that, but the process has been, we used to do this, we used to do this. I mean, the electricity and the water that we pay is a few $1,000s. I'm not saying that Light and Water should pick that up, but where does it come from? Because we never had it appropriated to us, so we had to take that from another program. And so if you apply that across all of our kind of accounts, you can see sort of how we got to where we are.
The participation is down though as well, right? Those were the numbers I remember from the Saturday meeting, and you attributed that to the fees being too high.
Yeah, I mean, the participation in a lot of some of the things that were our big ticket items, our sports camps, summer sports camps, the beach. The beach is a tricky animal because we had to raise the beach fees to be able to cover all the costs associated with that. And people are allowed to park on the side streets, and so they do, and they walk in. And we don't charge them to walk in, we're not allowed to. And then last year, we used to tell people that they couldn't park in the boat launch, and they had to leave, and then some person called the DEP, and that's a state boat launch, and they came down and they gave us tickets. Me, personally, I got a ticket for telling people that they couldn't park there. So now, even if you're not launching a boat, you have to prove that you're not launching a boat, and you can park there. And so the line is just incredible. And you're basically parking in the light. You're using the amenities, you're using the water to hose down your boat, you're using the toilet facilities, your kids are in the picnic area, you want your water tested, but you're not paying for a sticker.
Back, and I'm probably dating myself, but back when Lisa was here, I think it was $10 for a parking permit for the beach, and then we would have an increased fee for out-of-town people. And
It was 50.
there was a grant to clean the lake, right?
Right.
And at that point then, the state said you can't charge non-residents more than X% more than local residents. And so that was fine, we did that. Then when that expired, when we tried to bring the non-resident back up, for some reason, well, then they were used to the lower fees, they didn't want to pay that, we lost the non-residents, so then we had to increase the fee to residents, and eventually it got to the point where, as Kate said, rather than paying the $10 or $20 to park at the beach with a sticker, they'll just forego that altogether and just try and find a place and walk to the beach. So things like that.
And in 2010, we had a very, very inflated non-resident membership because Nara Park was having some, and the good fortune to us is that they were contaminated, which was lovely. So we got all their people, but the problem is when we came back in, it was, what do you mean? You had 200 and something out of town persons, and it was like, yeah, but they didn't have an alternative. The next year they go and they're getting their beach sticker for $35. We're charging $195. That's a no-brainer. Now we're charging residents $55. They can go for $45 to Nara, and frankly, it's an on-par facility, you know? And so that's where we're at. People don't want to pay $55 to use their town beach and have found other ways that they can get what they want without having to pay it. And we're bound by that.
All it takes is money.
I'll just reiterate, and the 102,000 was the amount that was kind of held back in 2013. And it was 40,000 or 41,000 in salaries, plus the associated benefits, which was about 18,000 in retirement costs, health insurance plans, FICA, Medicare, all of the other fringe benefit costs. So it equaled 102,000. Since then, as Kate said, a lot of the retirement costs have increased for almost double because of changes within the salary plan and the grid, employees being required to be moved to different areas of the schedules. The general fund subsidy hasn't changed to absorb any of those. So it's been a drawdown of the reserves, and we've seen the reserves going down even more.
You know what just occurred to me, and I don't mean to, but Fred and I had discussed earlier the change in even starting somebody at a 1, but it just occurred to me that I don't take benefits. So if someone is hired to replace my position and they want benefits, then it's not a $22,000 savings, because a family plan is about 12. So,
13 something.
yeah. So just kidding about the 20. I didn't even, I mean,
that makes sense.
I didn't even think of it
Probably
because
feels
it's
worse than he
just,
did before he walked in here.
but so, and eventually, again, like I said, it's sort of a Band-Aid, because you want, I would think you would want someone with some real longevity, so they stay and they get step increases.
And one of the, I'm sorry, Alan, one of the other things, and this is something I've also brought up that I've beaten Bonnie and Steve to death on, is simply that by us having to contribute as much from fees as we do towards running the other programs, is that it's a tax on those people, and they're supporting the broader-based community things that we try to do for no fee. And, you know, I've had people call me on it, but I don't think it's at the top of their list, is, hey, why am I paying this much to play soccer when you're taking some of that fee and using it to run the movie at the beach or the third Thursday? Well, you're right, it's not, and I've discussed with these people before as well. It's, you know, if you're paying $400 or $500 or $600 per year in fees, plus whatever the school athletic fees are and the bus fees, those are all things that, you know, we used to be able to deduct on our taxes because they were part of the property tax, and now it's just, we're hitting people up with money that they can't recover at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you take a community education class for $20, or it's $28 now, I mean, that's a huge difference. People say, oh, for $20 I can do it, but 28, now you're starting, well, maybe I can't, you know? And that's where we're at. The class maybe only costs $15 to run, you know, so that in, you know, 7 years ago, we would make $5, you know, to cover some admin of it and pay the instructor. And so that class is completely self-sustaining. But now you're gonna have to charge 28 and you get 0 people. So now what we're seeing is, you know, we've chased people away to other communities. Someone just came in to, you know, say, gee, the fees are really high, and, you know, they were looking in comparison to other areas, and it's true.
Well, I agree with Fred. I don't think that we should be running a park and rec program that's just fee-based. That if you can afford to pay the fees, then your kids get to play in park and rec programs. If you can't, then go whistle. I think 4 or 5 years ago, when this committee made the decision to have you park and rec go enterprise fund and pay all of your own pay, all of your own fees or costs, I don't think it occurred to any of us that when we did that there was so much in fringe benefits that were being paid by the town that was now going to be picked up by Park and Rec. The retirement benefits, the insurances, pens, paper, all of that stuff goes to every department, but now that department doesn't get that. Any of you have to pay electricity, light and water. The assessing department doesn't pay for electricity, light and water. Nobody else does. We didn't consider that. At least I didn't, and I suspect most people didn't. And that's been a significant cost. Now, you take that base cost and the inflation that's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, and we know it because we see it in every department. Nobody is coming in here with a less budget this year than they had last year. But Park and Rec, if their budget goes up, they got to find the money someplace. They went from over $100,000 in reserves or more, trying to keep pace with the inflation, and with not as much help as they could get from us as they needed. Now they've depleted their reserves. They're at a point where they're going to have to cut programs. I just don't see this happening. I think we need to rethink how we deal with this department. And I don't think we should be dealing with this department in any way, shape, or form different than we deal with others, except that what they charge for fees can be used to offset the cost. But I think we need to rethink this that they have to pay every nickel and dime that it costs to run that department, the way we would like, and the people in town would like to see it run.
Right, but I do think that the first step, and I feel for you for dealing with the selectmen over the years. I really believe it's a face-to-face with the selectmen, because the selectmen are elected to be the stewards for the voters that put them in. And this is a town, in effect, a town department. It's run by an elected board, but it's the same taxpayers that are receiving the benefit for this. And if you feel that your mission is in conflict with the way the town is able to fund it, then either the mission has to change, or the selectmen really should take a position on this. And if they tell us that, yep, this is really important and we should look for a way to fund the 80,000 or whatever the number is, then that gets stood up against every other request that we have. Right now, the 84 or whatever $1,000 delta is in the 319.
Yeah, it's in the mission budget request.
Okay, so at a minimum, we're 400,000 in the hole. If the selectmen come back and say, yep, we agree with the Park and Rec commissioners that this is what we want to do, then we're 400 in the hole, and it gets stacked up with everything else.
2 points. One, I agree with Fred, and the timing is appropriate, because now is the time when prioritization within the budget's occurring, and we oftentimes get drawn into across the board approaches to things, because if we're looking, as Fred just said, at a $400,000 operating deficit, not unusual this time of year, not to say we're going to have a magic way out of it, but even within a situation where we're starting our budget process, that much in the red, that doesn't mean that in any given year, some departments has a priority for cause that would justify. We did it last year with the Council on Aging. They'd experienced a explosion in population and needs and services. Similar with the Veterans Agent. Everybody can make a good case why they should have more money, but some people have unforeseen circumstances, and that's that's the nature, it seems, of what you're saying. And that's the second part of my point, is I think the argument needs to be spelled out in a short math document that kind of says, where does this 84 emanate from and where does it go to? So I don't disbelieve anything you said anecdotally, Fred, but I'd like to have something to be able to refer to as, here's how we get to that $84,000 number, the justification for it. So it's a little tough to kind of, okay, I hear that piece, but did that mean 10, did that mean 12, blah, blah, blah. I remember a document from a few months ago, but it was kind of a mix of narrative and then some math, and then narrative and then some math.
It was in the budget documents that was given to you. I mean, the document has some tables, but you're right, it does have some verbiage in there too.
This is a snapshot.
That we've got.
All right. So you can see that, when the town provided that funding for those benefits, and now they don't. Okay. So
something that shows 84,000.
Exactly.
Makes up 84,000.
Well, it wouldn't be 84 in that document because I just accepted the position 2 days ago.
Okay, that's.
So, I mean, but you could take 12 now, because minus 12, because you probably should budget for.
Something this size that says, here's the dollar figure of the problem we're dealing with, how we got there. I understand it's in here, if somebody walks us through it.
That was awesome.
And here's where it's going to.
There's another one
That's
there.
not what this says.
That's $12,000 off because of my leaving.
No, this doesn't even say, there's not $84,000.
I don't know how this is.
Is this essentially what we're driving
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
Except it's 90,000.
Yeah, because with Kate's leaving and my math, there's some
Yeah,
differences.
okay, I just want to confirm that, yeah.
Okay, well, if we have the detail, but again, I think you really should go head-to-head with the selectmen.
Well, we did go to the selectmen, and the only question they asked is, that they were never brought the policy decision, or was there a policy decision on the reduction in the town subsidy for Park and Rec? And I don't have the answer to
The problem is,
that.
we're caught in the middle between Selectmen and FinCom. So what would be great is if the FinCom could support us in, taking a stance.
Well, we generally like to hear what the selectmen's priorities are first, and then we advocate on that. But I mean, it's, just to repeat, in last year, we had a similar situation. We were walking into town meeting with a prospective budget deficit. We have a structural deficit that we know about, across the town wide, but we were still able to identify a couple of areas of need and support that, and so had the selectmen. This is the beginnings of an argument towards it. I wouldn't say that this is, completely makes the case, but that's the notion of what we're looking for, because you have a story to tell, a reason why you're in the position you're in.
Right.
It's just that's what we need to get a little more concrete, and you're doing it at the right time and prioritization. What, Keith, toward the end of the month, I think the selectmen is scheduled to revisit the priorities, or was that just
26th.
capital? 26?
Yeah. A week from Monday.
Week from Monday.
I think as just for, and this is really, you can take this with a grain of salt, but I think it was difficult. We've had this conversation between various boards for many, many years, and so it's difficult for the department staff specifically to see other priorities, as you said, being brought forward, and those are just as important, if not, but this department's important too. And so I think that sometimes because we can collect fees, there's a thought that we should just collect more. And as a staff person, I feel like sometimes we're penalized because we have the ability to collect fees, and so it's thought of as not that much more of a priority than, say, increasing the hours of the outreach coordinator or something like that, which is also super important, and I get that. So it's very difficult. We went to the Board of Selectmen and said this, a year ago and then 2 years ago, and it was, well, there wasn't a policy decision, and then sort of nothing really happened. And so, we kind of put a Band-Aid on it, and so it's hard for staff to sort of not understand why this department is being treated differently, or feeling like maybe the town doesn't really want to have the services that we've tried to provide, or something
I
like
tell you,
that.
based on and again, I'm relatively new around here, based on some of the years of experience, right, some of the people at this table. But I've seen going through the budget process that there are, as is always the case, right, there's different departments that have different ways of doing things. There's some that have crying needs and don't sell themselves as well as some other ones that do, right? And that's a reality, but that's a reality. So to make your case as succinctly as you can and to keep making it. And you may have to come back year after year, but you just have to do it because that's how it works. And I don't think you should take that personally, that like last year we didn't get it. And I said, but I told them that last year, why don't they remember it this year? It just doesn't work that way.
Well, I think we only take it personally because then we have to react, right? And
No,
so this year, we're
I
gonna
totally
have to
understand
close
all that. I'm
the
saying
beach. That's an absolute fact, and what's then gonna happen?
And, well, I just say, to back up what Betsy's saying, when you throw that out there to most people's ears, it's like, okay, this is the immediate threat, and they, people, they don't get around to hear the rational argument. And I think the other factor you mentioned, Kate, is a reality. You are an income-generating department, so a lot of people who aren't dealing with that on a day-to-day basis just say, oh, it pays for itself. Well, it doesn't. So that's the part of the story that you have to focus on telling. The income pays for X. It results in us having fees that are too high and declining membership. It does, it does pay for the staff, it does allow us to do this, but if, because of those factors, we're gonna lose a lot of programming unless we get this dollar amount. What's this dollar amount? Well, this dollar amount this $84,000 represents the things that aren't covered by our fee-based system, which is the increases to the personnel that were put on us, the increases to the, OPEB that, are a secondary result of that, whatever, just kind of lay it out that way without just, hanging the threat over the heads for the start. It's a bad way to start the conversation, I think. I mean, we know program cuts are a reality if you're not put on a sound footing. Okay, now what's becoming a little more clearer is why you're out of whack. Why doesn't the fees add up to a self-sufficient budget? That's that's the crux of it. That's the part where I think we could get around supporting, because I think we primarily think of it as a fee-based program, but if there's a delta, then fine. It should be something that's easy for everybody to understand, why that delta exists, what the dollar amount is, and then, how we approach it.
So does everybody on FinCom understand then how we got to where we got to?
Not enough. That piece of paper is a good start, but I think there's a little bit more explanation. I think Fred's got it in front of him now.
What I think we'd like to know, though, leaving this meeting, is if there's questions, if there's still a detail, we don't want to keep doing a do-loop, all right? We need to have a concrete, final submittal, if you will, as to the format,
Well, then
how
maybe
we
we
want
can
to see
get
it.
questions into the chair, and you could forward a memo to them or a conversation with them to say, here's the questions that I've answered. I just can't think of everything offhand that might come to mind 2 days from now.
I can think of one. If that $84,000 is to keep things at their current level, and you are losing memberships due to high fees, would you consider reducing some of these fees to attract more people and then building up that $84,000 to something else?
So we have two scenarios. We have the if we get it and if we don't.
No, but I think what you're saying is if we cut our fees for, say, whatever
No,
program.
if we go back to the way we were
Will
4
we-
years ago.
Will we increase the revenues?
It's possible. It's a gamble. And it's not one that, we can say with any, certainty. But the thought is that if we were to adjust beach stickers to a fee that seemed more reasonable to people, and then do a really good job on explaining where the fee goes to and why it's necessary, people may feel more amenable to paying $35 than $55. And so we may sell 150 more stickers, 200 more stickers. So that's the gamble we're taking. It's not an exact science, but it has worked in other communities. We've seen it work with some special events that we've done. People don't mind paying $5, they won't pay $15. So, there are some areas where we were on the lower end, summer camp being one of them. We raised summer camp $8 a week. Seems like a small amount, that's a manageable amount for people. That was able to cover the increases that we're going to have because minimum wage went up. It's not going to cover the 3.5% or 3.25% increases for 5 staff members. But it will cover the cost and then some of running that program. If we don't get it, what we had to look at was very realistically, what doesn't bring in money? What are the programs that, and you could nickel and dime and say, we're going to take this, we're going to take this, but those are, $1,000 here, $500 here. The beach, I hate to keep harping on it, but it was in the hole $30,000. That's a huge chunk. And it also takes almost an entire staff person's time, at least for 14 weeks out of the year. So the thought is that, maybe things shift around and you lose an entire person. If you lose an entire person in the office, then you're losing the work of an entire person, which would be, half the special events and some of the outreach that we do, and certainly the beach and maybe some of the camps. And then that, plus their retirement contribution and their, that's a very real non-threat. I mean, that's how we can get to that number.
But I think, Steve, also, if you, past data is important. And if we go back and look at when the fees were lower, what were we getting for revenue? But the thing is, going back that many years, we also didn't have to pay the benefit costs that we have to today. So using the enterprise fund to help subsidize that was going to happen because of all those extra costs that we had to incur. So even if we went back to and we used those numbers and maybe we increased it by 5% or 10%, it's not enough because of the magnitude of those other costs that we have to incur.
And when the fees were cheaper, we were getting a bigger budget at the time, too. We increased the fees because our budget kept going down.
When I started here, there was a budget for lifeguards of $26,000, which is great because we spent about 37. So we were able to recoup the difference in that from beach stickers. But then the next year, that went to 0. So I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if you make a presentation to the selectmen, you don't want to set yourself up to continue on a failed commission.
Yeah. Right.
So.
So the 84,000 basically just keeps you where you are.
There's some reduction, but nothing hugely drastic.
But to Steve's point, it's no reduction in fees for anything or anything like that.
Oh, yes, there's a reduction in the beach fees to try to see if we can get some people back. There's a reduction in some of the sports leagues fees and perhaps proposing an increase to the sports, I didn't mean to say sports leagues. I meant to say sports camp.
That needs to be mentioned in your pitch, that's all
Right, you
factored.
got it. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we can try to, that's, so.
But understand that.
The document that we gave you at budget time had all that in it. It's hard to kind of squeeze it all into one, so.
That's a process that the Park and Rec goes through every year. Every year, you have to go back and look at the programs. You have to look at what the surrounding communities are doing. You have to look at the revenue you're generating, the participants, the programs, the trends, all that. That's done every year. Every year. So it's not going to change. Our budget goes down. We're going to lose people. We're going to lose programs. But the programs we still run, we're going to still do that due diligence every year.
But not everybody knows that, so it's, it may well be in your budget scenario, but 90% of the world, 99% of the world reads the first page, and that's, the important stuff needs to be on the first page.
Yeah, no, I mean, even just the beach fees alone, that thing has been tweaked every year. Because back when we had to cut the out-of-town fees, that's when we also got to cut, the subsidy for lifeguards was cut. And the only reason we were able to pay the lifeguards that year was the Vinnie Cooper Fund gave us.
Right.
I think they covered the cost of it, and then
But
since.
the lifeguards being paid, to me, that's clearly a policy decision, and that's a Board of Selectmen decision. Do we want to be subsidizing and paying that out of the operating budget or not? And so that's the kind of thing, that's different than we're paying, we changed the accounting stuff, and so now you have to pay benefits, and we're forcing you to give people raises. Those are different discussions that we can latch on to and say, yeah, that's not right. But if you're saying, the lifeguard should be, and I know that's just an example, but the lifeguards being subsidized or not, that's a policy decision. That really needs to come from the Board of Selectmen. That's not a FinCom type of decision.
That was just an example.
I understand, but I want to make clear there that.
Well, no, I know. I mean, Paul mentioned, don't go in threatening to cut, but when you're looking at, the difference is 1.5 people. There isn't anything to say but that, and it's not, and no, but I'm just saying, it's not just the little dinky thing. It's not cutting out Third Thursday, and it's not cutting out the Halloween parade.
I just don't think you need to hit people over the head with that part of it to make the case. I mean, I'm understanding it a lot better.
Oh, no, I'm not saying
tonight.
that's how we're gonna lead it off.
Right.
I'm just saying at some point, because I've been doing this for a long time with them.
Yeah,
on
well,
two prongs,
I'll
and
repeat again, and years aren't getting any easier, but last year was tough, and we still picked a couple of people out of the crowd, not us so much, the selectmen identified, and we backed them on it, because the reasons were compelling, and you're building a case for that. It's just getting that argument as succinct as possible and backed up with the numbers so that somebody, like us or like them who should know what we're talking about but don't get it, after reading one page. And that's, I would try to get on the selectmen's agenda or get something into their hands before the 26th when they're next going to start, identifying priorities in the budget process.
Yeah, and again, we can go through this and we can bounce around, and you got somebody like Fred going through the numbers again. When you get the Board of Selectmen, you're gonna have it ready for them, that they can easily consume. I mean, really, because otherwise they won't get it. So, and I'm not picking on them, it's just in general, you really need to do this. And I would recommend that you focus on some of the positive things, like your program about, this is how we intend to help get more beach revenue. If we can lower the stickers, we're gonna go out and we're gonna promote that. And you could be around, have people volunteering around town to try to sell more stickers and explain to you what's behind it. Some of those positive things that you're doing, the positive things that you're looking at and how you're gonna improve this. I mean, that's the stuff you wanna go after.
Maybe we should have Jimmy put up no parking signs a half mile. Or no parking without a beach sticker. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Betsy, obviously, this is very
Right.
important for our town, that we
Sure.
get
Right.
this all worked out. It's
Absolutely.
not supposed to be adversarial.
Right.
I think it's something more than maybe this spreadsheet, because the spreadsheet hasn't, apparently it's not locking in what we need. Maybe, like as we're talking about the financial policies and procedures that we're doing for other areas, maybe we need to try to codify something that might help us understand what the needs are for Park and Rec, because there are quite a few moving parts to this. You have the fees, but you also offset it with other outside fund sources that we balance against the services that are being provided. And there's a lot of fluctuation and movement as we try to balance this. And it's just simply not as easy as approving the need. There's, trying to bound and, capture what that collection of services is, and then line up a dollar amount to kind of help them through that. So I don't know if we do break this apart as a separate item for like a financial policy update, that we're maybe, as we look there, like
Understanding how they're
CPA,
set up and so on, yeah.
it could help our selectmen also understand it.
Yeah, it's just, we got it, short term is a problem.
Yeah.
The other thing that, I mean, just to be honest too, is like, last year and so on, we found some extra money, and this year we're already well behind the 8 ball, and the schools are coming down and saying they need more too. So, it's too bad you hit the end of your extra funds this year, because that's going to also make it more challenging. I mean, that's just the reality where we are right now. But I think that I think just, again, summarize what you've got, some more of the back, still has to be succinct, because people won't consume it, like I think Paul said, the first page is, and you lose them, people. But you need to get your story out there and go to town select, because you're going to have to do it at a town meeting anyway. Even if all this goes through, it also has to be done at town meeting. So you've got to get it so that people can readily understand what's going on. And I think for the Board of Selectmen, there's some policy decisions in terms of beyond the providing funding, because we've changed some of the rules, and so that has hit you, and you've been using your reserves to pay for it up till now, and now the reserves are gone. Just in general, what is the approach? And what do you want to do?
To that point, Betsy, will somebody from FinCom be at the 26th meeting with the selectmen? Because I think it would
It may
help
well
us
be
if we have somebody also explain some of that history and the discussions that took place 5 years ago.
Yeah, it
or
may be
such.
joint meeting
I think we're
anyway.
on schedule for a joint meeting with them that night
The
too.
26th
Yeah,
is a
it'll be a
joint.
joint meeting on
Yeah.
the 26th with FinCom, the school committee too, I
Depending
hope.
on the
Right,
school
right.
committee.
Maybe.
Right.
No, hey, there's nothing left after the school committee.
Yeah, not after the school committee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who do we know in the school committee?
Mike Fontenot.
And-
Just not to beat this to death, but I had talked to Fred in the hallway a little earlier. There's a question about closing the beach. Can you close the beach?
No, they just wouldn't
What
go
happens if you guys don't run the beach program and there are no lifeguards out there or anything else? What's the liability to the town? Can we close the beach?
You
Can
can.
you legitimately do that
People will still swim.
as a cost-cutting move?
Can you legally close it? Yeah, you close it, you close
Yeah,
the sign.
does it become quote?
Well,
interactive?
People swim at night now, and there's not a lifeguard there.
do a lot of
I
things,
mean,
but could you close the beach?
Yeah.
No.
From a liability standpoint, posting the sign does it. From a practical standpoint,
Okay,
it's a
go.
lot more involved, so.
The other big issue is what's gonna happen to the quality of the water in the lake, because one of the big things is people bring their animals down there and let them go in. And when it's staffed, we tell them that they can't do that. And 2 years ago, we had a real situation with that, and it was closed for E. coli 4 times. And that'll be every week, except for it won't be tested, so people won't know.
There you go.
Swim at your own risk.
So,
We don't mean drowning.
All right,
Okay.
hone your pitch, and we'll see you on the 26th at the selectmen
Yeah,
meeting. How's that?
if you can get us the spreadsheet or the PowerPoint or whatever you're gonna come into the selectmen with prior to that, that would be helpful. And if we have questions or comments or suggestions, we'd be happy to do that, absolutely.
And we don't have meetings before that, but you know the people here, so just,
Yeah.
if you want to say, what do you think about this? Come hit us.
I won't be here, so be nice to me.
Good luck in Concord, bud.
Thanks, yeah, it's exciting. But I'm looking forward to a positive outcome. I'll be checking.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be there.
I was also going to say, don't be afraid to use, you've got some very strong people here who can help you.
Okay.
Crosswalk.
What's
I'll just do a crosswalk. You know, where it was. What it, why not?
All right. Bonnie, I guess you're next. Talk about budget and capital update.
I know that some of you were there last night for the budget update, so I'm just going to go over a couple of the pieces of information. Come on.
There you go.
It's like
8 degrees out.
We're heating the outside now.
Yeah, now we can take that away from Park and Rec. Take it off Park and Rec. They left the,
Somebody opened the door and left it.
Left it open?
yeah, Park and Rec. So they need to
That's why the
pay
utility bill.
pay
Take
the
back
oil bill.
everything I said good about them.
So I want to see all you people there on the 26th.
We'll match the school committee's attendance, how's that?
That's what I'm afraid of. Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, is there a basketball game that night?
I don't know.
That will make a big difference on the school committee.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah, whether we go or not. 'Cause when I used to take their minutes, if there was basketball, we had to
Okay.
come to the school committee meetings.
Ready?
Go. Sorry, I didn't know you were waiting for
No,
me.
no, no,
Yeah,
that's all right.
please, go ahead.
So just to kind of go through some of the changes in the level staffing budget summary, which again may change more depending on what we do with Park and Rec. Right now, we're looking at a projected deficit of $319,000. This has the school appropriation in at a $550,000 increase, which is not what they're asking for. So if I put the school appropriation in at what they're requesting, the deficit is $899,000. So the deficit is somewhere between, 319 and 900,000, dependent on the funding of the school budget.
The paper said tonight that Chapter 90 is going to get an appreciable increase.
Chapter 90 got an increase, which is roadway money.
I mean, not, that this, it is road.
It is roadway money, yeah.
Not 70.
And Chapter
It's not
90 went
70.
up, 195,000 versus our 391 that we normally
Got
get.
my
So that was a
70s
big
and 90s
increase.
mixed up.
But it's not going to help the school budget.
That 550 was a plug that you had put in, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it was based mostly on a discussion that we had last fiscal year when we talked about the use of reserves and what a potential budget increase might look like. Last year, it was, the appropriation increased 300,000, so I had put in 550. It wasn't anything that was formally agreed to, it was just a discussion point. It does happen to equal the number that they referenced as the salary increase that's needed. We haven't had the detail presented to us yet to support that, because there might be some retirements that, provide some savings and therefore. But that's where that number comes from. So.
The schools are requesting $1,000,001.
130, yeah. So that would put it at 899. If I go over, and this also has the Park and Rec subsidy level funded at the number that we've been using. The mission budget summary. This has the school appropriation at the full requested amount of $1,130,000 higher than this year. It has the Park and Rec subsidy at the level that they were requesting at their meeting. It has all of the other additions to staffing that might have been requested by fire and police. That deficit is projected at $1,385,000. So, we still do not have any information on state aid. Obviously there's going to be some changes with the new governor coming in. I've already heard some rumblings about new Chapter 70 formulas, but I haven't seen any information yet. I don't know whether that would help or not help in Littleton's case. But in any case, I have state aid level funded. I have a very modest increase in local receipts because we really pushed them to by about 9% this year. And I don't want to push it too far beyond that until I get a good feel for whether we're able to meet that target.
If we look at the debt service line, the 471, the reduction in debt service in effect flows into the operating budget.
No. That debt service has actually gone and become available for capital. And I know it looks funny on this because you don't see an increase in available for capital, but the capital for fiscal 2015 increased by the snow and ice money. So this is like an actual for 15, not a budgeted for 15. So we pumped in more money from like $300,000 from snow and ice to use towards capital. That's not included in 16 here because I have the money appropriated for snow and ice in the budget.
Right.
So it creates this false level funding in the scenarios. But that $471,000 reduction is part of this $1,000,009 that's available for capital. And it's mostly short-term debt.
Okay.
How much did we have last year? Is it always up that high, or was it this just a?
No, this is kind of it was like $1,000,003 the year before.
Yeah, right, I remember, yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as what was available from debt service, wasn't,
No, it was like 551,000, I think, last year, and it's like 600 and something thousand this year. We'll go through that in the capital slides. But then there's long-term debt that gets retired, and then there's short-term debt that I'm using for, like, the track. We funded the track over a 3 or 4 year period. So that money is now not needed in short-term debt.
Yeah.
But it's going to be used for roadway next year, but it's available, it's going to be used for roadway in 17 to fund the New Estate and Nagog Road reconstructions as part of that plan. But it'll be available in 16 for something that is non-recurring, not budget, but, and that's why you see this reduction of 471, because it's both the short-term debt that we're not going to need to use and the long-term debt that's being retired. So it's kind of a one-year increase that's.
Okay, so it more than offsets the snow and ice that we put into capital last year.
Yep. So that's where we are right now for the 2016 budget. We haven't received any data yet from the school department on what I know that they're tweaking their numbers, they're going through the accounts.
I went to their budget committee meeting this morning, which was mostly them asking me questions about what they.
How much time they have?
Yeah, well, what they're looking for, what we're looking for from them. But they did indicate that that this Thursday they were going to prioritize the capital list and that they're going to be coming up with hard numbers on the staffing and then hard numbers on the SPED, which I think is most of it.
Right.
And that should be within this week so that we'll have it at the meeting, before the meeting on the 26th.
But
And the
you would
grants was the
expect
other
it
piece.
to be an increase of $1.1 million.
They didn't mention that this morning, I didn't.
Pardon me?
But you would expect it to be an increase of $1 million,
Well,
the schools.
Well, I mean, they're requesting the $1.1 million, so
I think
I
that
don't know.
included a couple extra people and some other things, and I think they've kind of, I mean, they're hearing the message that
Right.
it's a tight budget year, and so I would hope that number's going to go down, but we'll see.
They weren't being militant this
Right,
morning,
right.
being more reasonable.
Right.
Yeah. But the other thing they, they're making the case is that, it's much like, other departments like Park and Rec. It's like, there's parts of our existence that you guys don't understand. I encourage them, I said, if you want to make a presentation on something that you don't think we're getting, by all means, come in. So they're gonna. I think Kelly will be approaching you, or Mike
Okay.
will, about coming in and doing
Good.
something on SPED, because the reality on SPED is, I guess, so they say is they're doing a better job of keeping them in-house, but the individual case costs are just going through the roof. So, whatever.
Yeah, they've changed the way that they do the case assessment. So it used to be like a 5-year rolling average of the cost, and now they're saying, no, it has to be an actual
Yeah.
year-to-year cost. And it's an increase because they had some high years, so.
Some things I like
That's
to
got to be a big
point out.
business, because the biggest school around is in Lincoln.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness.
We also have kids that go and stay
Two things I'd like to
overnight
point out,
places.
I'd love to see is some FTEs, so how many full-time equivalents they have, how many teachers they have, how many teaching assistants. So when you see the changes in their budget from one year to the next, just looking at a number of changes, it goes from 150,000 to 380,000. Well, you adding 2 or 3 positions there? I mean, what's going on? I think that's probably the most crucial thing, is to see some full-time equivalents in the schools and to know where their bodies are. And then the second thing is, as far as special education tuitions, is what's their enrollment? How many kids did they have last year and how many kids they have this year? So that you see the ins and the outs, so that you can appreciate that it went up 400,000 because we've got 5 new kids that are, costing us whatever. It's tough to understand that they need $400,000 for an increase in tuitions when you don't see any of the data to support that.
I did have a one-on-one with Mike a couple weeks ago, and I asked for those specific things, and I thought we were going to get them, so.
Haven't got them yet, but,
The other thing, not to keep harping on the schools, that they alluded to, which was athletic fees and transportation. They're collecting all these fees, well, where's that in their budget, right? There's hundreds of
Involving
thousands of dollars they're collecting that they've got basically on the side that they do what they please with. And every school system I'm used to working for, it's all built in the budget, because every year they're collecting that money, which is just all these fees are, as they're alluding to, is just another form of taxation. I mean, the parents in town are paying this money, well, where's it being spent? It's not in the budget, it's not an offset, so be nice to know where that money is and what it's being spent on. So,
That's a good point.
yeah, I mean, how much do they collect in athletic fees? How much do they collect in bus fees? And where is that in relation to the budget?
Yep.
The other thing, and the big thing, is retirement savings. Okay, every year teachers are retiring. They're retiring at 80,000. Were they hiring a new teacher at 80,000? No, they hire them at 50. So for every new position that's coming in, they're saving $30,000. So for an example, in Wayland, they report retirement savings, $278,000 they saved. Again, that comes off.
Yeah, and then that was another item I specifically brought up with Mike, and he said, right now, we don't have a lot of those, but I said, okay, fine, but lay it out so everybody knows, right? So,
yeah, I mean, they're
You're
still
right.
maintaining, like, we're down 20 positions from where we were 5 years ago.
Right, they're down 4, right, well, where is
No,
there any?
20
There's,
is what they
there's,
said.
there's no FTEs anywhere.
Yeah.
Where is that? And then that brings up, well, let's look at, rather than budget
I'm
to
sorry, what
budget,
did-
let's look at
Wait, how many
actuals to
positions?
budget.
Like 20, 14 at one point, and then 5 others are different.
I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
No,
What I wonder is, how much, do we really have to, when we want information, have to ask them for it, or don't we have it ourselves?
this is where it gets into I can certainly go through and dump reports and start running reports on FTEs. The way that our software runs, I can do a snapshot of FTEs, like December of last year and December of this year, and I can tell you the difference, and we do it. But in the past, when I've presented data that comes out of our office, it's not met very well. very
Never.
positively.
Better
So-
than having nothing, though.
But, so I can do that. I mean, if that's the preference, it's just, I'm trying to,
We're trying to not be confrontational with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
But we
I think
still,
the last couple of years, we've tried
we
not
should
to.
put this list of asks, it's great to hear that you're working on blah, 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 and, we'll have that in hand by the 26th. Just a reminder, we'd like to have the following, included in that. Probably ought to come under the chair's signature. But, it's a polite memo. I mean, you've had a good dialogue with Mike, I had a good meeting today. There isn't a lot of rancor there, but it won't really matter unless we start getting the data. I mean, you're asking the right questions, Chris.
Yes, I mean, yeah. I want to support the school system and the school department, but I mean, when they're asking for $1.1 million and you don't even know where all this activity is and what's.
And that's, these things are, we're not talking about like the forensic audit that's going on in Chelmsford. This is just the common stuff that everybody shares.
Right, yeah. I mean, like I said, like I pointed out before, I mean, Wayland School Department, every year they present a budget booklet, they call it. It's 70-something pages. It goes everything from enrollment to student-to-teacher ratios to all their new initiatives to all their FTEs and spending.
Do you happen to have a digital copy of that, maybe in your computer or anything?
Yes, I have that. Actually, I've been bringing it, but I forgot to bring it tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think you
can
emailed
send
some
it.
out, didn't
Yeah, I've been
you?
sending that out of my book, but, and it also gives them an opportunity to.
Well, I
just
didn't get it,
present
but for a
everything
couple of
that's
weeks
going
there,
on. It's,
my email was full, it was blissful around the holidays. Everybody's emails were bouncing back to them, and I wasn't getting them, so I don't know if you
Yeah.
sent it out then. But
I'll send it back out. And it just, like I said, it just gets into the details of everything that's going on in the school department so that not only us folks that handle all the numbers understand what's going on, but the parents in town can see
Everybody.
what the
Well-
student-to-teacher ratios are and where the money's being spent, and I mean, everything. It's great.
I think it might be helpful to point out that, we're doing it too. We're not asking them to do anything that the town side isn't doing. When
Yes.
you get your budget books, every individual salary is listed with any stipend that they might get, where they're going in their salary range, every line item budget, grants, gifts, revolving funds that are used. It's all, we're not asking for anything
Right.
beyond.
Anything that someone else isn't submitting, right? Yep.
That's where I am for
In the
the,
end, it doesn't matter. As soon as we find out exactly how much they need by all the detail, we'll give it to them.
Yeah, well,
Well, but if there's not there, I mean, this year we may be in the situation where it's not there. And so then, I mean, then where are we? We cutting, or are we asking the town for more money?
well, that's,
I mean, that's-
that's going to be a policy directive.
And that's a whole nother, then you're into a whole nother level
well,
of,
I mean, if we have more data on circuit breakers, school choice, and these activities and student fees and whatever, maybe they have more room to use up those available fees and money they're collecting, as opposed to asking us for $1.1 million, and we find they only need $800,000. So we just saved $300,000. I mean, I think there's a lot of flexibility in the available funding offsets they have. Circuit breaker, I mean, how much they got to spend this year? Bonnie already pointed that out. They got to increase what they budgeted for to be able to be in compliance with what the state requires.
They have to spend like the $700,000, I
Yeah.
think it is.
Right.
Have to.
700,000, and they budget, what, 500,000, or what'd they budget? 550,000, or?
Actually, I'm sorry, for fiscal 15, they have to spend $826,000, and they budgeted $750. So we know that they're going to spend $826, because they have to.
Have to, right.
But what's budgeted was $750. And then there's school choices.
So that's old money they have to spend, and then they're getting new money. So,
all right, I mean, I don't think we go into this thinking that anybody's hiding any money or trying to do anything wrong. It's just a matter of what's available, and we have to make some decisions on how some of these different things.
You
would
do
be
have to ask why
Right.
it would be
Why
$1.1
there's more
million.
transparency, right?
Right, and then on top of the $1.1 million, it's damn close to $1 million in capital.
right, yeah, right.
When you consider that they're asking for capital in the 800,000 range, and then you go down the maintenance side, they expect to get 50% of that,
Right.
which is 400 some odd thousand, so they're asking for $1 million also in the capital budget.
And then any increases in staff, what do they get, what are our increases for health insurance, for retirement? That's all on the town side.
And, yeah, that comes out of us.
Yeah, that comes out of, they don't even see that.
Hey, they
we pick
collect
up the tab
fees.
on
How
that.
come we don't have them pay their retirement
Yeah.
and their insurance out of the fees like we do Park and Rec?
Let's not beat up on them unless they're here to.
And we don't want to do the they is us. We don't want to go,
No.
that doesn't, it's just not helpful in the long run, right?
No,
We
no.
want to do is, we want to understand, we want to be helpful, we want to work
Yes.
together
No,
to
no.
understand where the numbers are, to come up with something that makes sense for the whole town.
Right.
And there's going to be some hard choices to make this year, and that's the message to everyone, I think. So,
Capital.
capital, yes.
So I did this review for the selectmen last night, and I just wanted to go through, it's more informational so that you ask questions, you can voice your opinions, but there is no funding plan recommended here at this point. I did tell the selectmen that I would put a draft plan together for their next meeting so that they can start pushing things out and, you know, making some prioritized recommendations. But right now, this is
Probably,
just.
the next meeting is probably this joint meeting, the 26th.
Correct. So this is just to show you what the requests are, and how they sit. So we have $1.9 million, just over $1.9 million in available funds for capital, and we have $2.8 million in requested items as of today. So there's a variance of $947,000. So this does not include any CPA funds that might be available for any projects that might be eligible. It's just regular operating.
I would just like to say that even though there's not enough money to fulfill all the requests, 1.9 million available for
great-
capital is an incredible number.
Yes, considering where we were, you know, in 2007, I mean, this is amazing. It's inside the levy, it's,
Not lose sight of what's
Right.
going on here.
this is a great accomplishment.
Maybe we ought to be salting some of that away.
So,
That's why we created that account.
That's right.
so where is this $1.9 million coming from? We have $870,000 that we'll be using from undesignated fund balance in accordance with our financial policies. We also have just over $1 million in accumulated debt service reductions, both long and short term. So that's where the $1.9 million is made up from. Again, no CPA funding. This money, per our policies, cannot be used for regular recurring operating costs. It can only be used for one-time capital. Just to give you a little history.
But just to be clear, the debt service reductions, these are things that are being paid off. So we just don't have, this isn't the lower interest rates because of this stuff. This is, we're paying stuff off and we
Paying
haven't
stuff off.
done new things. Okay, just want to be clear.
Yep. So for this fiscal year, we used $872,000 out of undesignated fund balance, $551 from long-term retired debt, and $297 from snow and ice unexpended. And then we put an appropriation into our our regular stabilization fund, which brought us up to the $1.9 million that we pretty much used this year for one-time capital items. For fiscal 2016, we're estimating the same $870,000 available from undesignated. I've identified $682,000 in long-term debt service retirements. Short-term debt, there's a one-year blip of that $350,000. That is coming directly from the fact that we paid off the track last year, or this year, and we paid off the small amount of Russell Street School debt inside the levy this year, and the Foster Street sewer project this year. So that $350,000, I had originally thought I would need to spend that on the roadway plan in 16, but because of the delays with New Estate and NAGOG with the takings that needed to be done, we haven't done the project yet. I have not placed the borrowing for it, so I don't need to fund that debt service. So that is available kind of as a one-year thing. I didn't want, we can't let it go to the operating budget. If we don't do anything with it, it will go to free cash. It doesn't mean you have to spend it, it's just an available source.
Could we put it into a stabilization fund, capital
Absolutely.
stabilization?
Yep. It's just an available
One
fund.
time, never happen again, maybe that's a perfect thing to start.
That's a perfect number to use.
To start putting in. I mean, I don't know what we would have to cut to do that, but, it's a bluebird, so maybe that would be a perfect thing to put into a reserve.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing. It's too bad that the project hasn't started, but, it is what it is.
Okay.
So I can actually do that in the funding recommendation if that's what the board would like to see. So of the 2.8 million in requests, there are a couple of items that could be considered, major capital projects that might qualify for debt, but there's not really a whole lot. There's the Long Store reassembly at $300,000. That may also qualify for CPC funding. Facility study recommendations, there's, right now, there's an earmark of $427,000 of the $1.2 million that were identified in that study. And I know that, those items are being reviewed annually for things that need to be done versus maybe things that don't. And I know you're going to convene that group again.
So we're in about the same situation we were last year, where the recommendation was over $1 million, and we did about 400, right?
Correct.
And again, we've got $1.3 million, and we're doing 400. So there's a balloon building out there that one of these days will pop.
Right. It's a wave that's being.
Okay.
You are correct.
So Bonnie, the 550,000 or so for the fuel facility is?
That is in fiscal 15. It's in this fiscal
So it's
year. It's
already
already been
funded.
appropriated and secured, so it's not in this at all.
Got it.
Okay?
I think it was 248 we funded.
And 300
at
from the
fall
light.
Town meeting.
Yep.
And light and water, the light department, not light and water. The
Right.
light department has committed
300.
300,000
Yep.
for.
Correct. And thank you for that. So capital requests, the timeline. The Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee are going to need to decide what items should be included. Some of these may not have any merit to be included in the plan. We need to identify which priority items could then be funded by CPA funds. There are a couple in here, just at first glance, that appear to be. All items included should be prioritized by the end of January, really, in order to start drafting financing plans for, actual implementation. The financing plan needs to be completed prior to the March 2015 close of the warrant, and then we have the spending plan recommended to the annual town meeting.
What is the likelihood that we'll be hearing from the Fields group again for the May town meeting? I've heard.
I haven't heard
nothing.
anything.
Haven't heard a
Have you
thing on that,
calling?
no,
Nothing?
no.
I just didn't know whether that, might throw a monkey wrench again.
Yeah, I mean, should we keep that on the radar screen somewhere? I mean, it went as far as a town meeting, this fall, so it may not appear, but we should not lose sight of it.
I can certainly, identify it as an item in the plan.
You mean
Is it something
the
that's
turf?
like, whether that's gonna come back or not, if it is.
I think they intend to
Not
come
be
back.
turf, but there may be other things that they're proposed to make those fields better, A,
Well, I mean,
Plan B too,
whatever,
right,
but
right.
if you, just so we were aware of what's happening with them,
Yeah.
that's all.
Okay.
I mean, we can just monitor the Lowell Sun and keep up to date on where the whole turf war and everything's going.
So the items that are included in the plan, again, they're one-time, non-operating type expenses, equipments, vehicles, maintenance, repairs to either facilities, so major building maintenance, major infrastructure, new buildings planned, and other non-operating one-time expenditures. Last year, those included like the transitional training services for the assessor's office, the master planning account. You don't want to build those into the operating budget, but they need to be funded. They're not really capital. So summary by department.
There, just as a blue sky, are there things in this year's budget that could be classified as one-time expenses?
In the budget?
The operating budget, the capital budget?
No, the operating, I'm just thinking. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
I
just
can't-
doing this. Is
I
there,
mean-
is there any stuff that we could say that's really just a one-time thing?
We-
Because most of the budgets are kind of level. It's
Yeah,
just
we
the
go
school
through-
would be the one place, like, what's this $1 million, right?
Other than, looking at that, when I get those budgets in, I go through
Everything,
sheet.
right?
And, I mean,
Right,
I'll
there's
pull
really
things
just not
out and go,
much, I
you
know.
need to
There
do a
really wasn't
capital
there much
request for
this
this,
year.
or,
Right, okay.
and things like, like the master planning, that's not really an operating budget request, but it's
Right.
not really a capital request, but we're putting it here because I said it needs to go here.
And it's a one-time.
It's
Should be
out of
its
the
own
region.
article.
Yeah, I agree with that, yep.
Yeah, so I mean, we've really scrubbed through, and I can't think of anything
Okay.
that's,
Okay.
There shouldn't be anything in the operating.
No,
account.
they
No, it
really,
shouldn't.
One-time expense. Anyone's going to admit to that would be just giving up money. Oh, yeah,
you can take that.
50 grand this year, but I don't need it next year. Here you go, you can have it. I don't need it.
So this is the summary by department. You can see that facility is the major draw for this at $783,000. You know, the school has probably, well, no, fire has the next request. There's a big truck coming up.
Yeah,
Well,
one item's like half
But
that
there's
much.
350,000 in the facilities, that really is sort of unique. It's not taking care of the buildings, it's reconstructing or reconstituting the
An old-
long store.
Right.
And then taking care of the old cemetery, 50,000.
So that's out of the facility one?
Yeah,
In the facility
Yeah,
number. so
those
that-
two items, there's $400,000 there, so.
yeah. But that might qualify for the CPC funding, both of those, so.
Whatever, but I mean,
yeah.
if you know, just looking at the summary, it looks like we're spending $750,000 on facilities. We're really spending less than half
Oh,
of it
yeah.
on facilities. And
Absolutely.
if that's what we need to do, that's what we need to do, but.
But the other thing is, there's nothing in here about the new fire department. There's no
That's-
studies, there's no plans, there's no nothing. No
Not-
putting money
no.
away, nothing.
Well, there's no request.
Right, I
I
know.
mean, the fire station plan, the way that it stands right now, based on the last board's vote, was it is in the 2017 capital. It's sitting there,
Build it?
600,000 for design.
For design
And then the
in
following
2017.
year,
Okay.
it's-
So the plan is still there, it
It's
just
still there.
hasn't
It's
hit
just,
yet.
it hasn't hit, yeah,
So that may be an argument for the 350 to go into the reserve.
right,
Less than the
to
pay.
mitigate that. So the police department, there's 171,000 in requests. 102,000 is to replace 2 marked vehicles, and I've listed the years and the mileage for each. The proposal is to replace them with 2015 Ford Interceptor type four-wheel drive vehicles
$2,000 for a
Yeah.
police car?
with equipment.
I assume it's fully loaded with everything it needs, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
sure,
all
sure.
the
It's amazing.
accessory equipment, too. And there's 43,000 to replace an admin vehicle, which is a almost 10-year-old Toyota 4Runner. All of the equipment would be auctioned off, and the funding would be put into a revolving account, so that next year, when we're looking for money to fund the capital plan, we can look to see if there's anything there. We've had better luck with that than trade-ins, so we're going to run another auction for some equipment this spring, so I'll let you know what we have available.
So ballpark, what do we get from 3, 4?
When we trade them in, we get nothing.
Right, but.
When we auction them, I think, some of them we got 5,
4 or 5 grand.
Yeah.
something like that.
it's for an auction to, I mean, it doesn't cost us really anything to run the auction, so it's worth it. 12,000 for the public safety radio system maintenance contract. This is an annual agreement. It protects over $1 million worth of assets, so it already paid for itself this year, so it was worth it.
How come that's just not in the operating?
Because if we put it into the operating at the time that it was
We're
brought
gonna
up,
get, it'll be spent on something else?
it could be spent on
But
something
isn't
else.
that the whole point of having accounts? You name contracted services and you only spend contracted expenses out of the contracted services account. You don't let supplies go in there or anything else.
No, you don't, but we don't, it's appropriated expenses, and then they budget them individually line items, but they can
Yes.
spend it any way they want within that expense total. Unless you appropriate by line item, which we don't, because the budget document would be 9 million pages long.
Yeah, but each department doesn't just have payroll and expenses.
No, they have everything. They have a
Right.
breakout for, 10 different accounts or whatever.
But isn't somebody monitoring what they're paying, what expenses are going in what account, which I assume would be you, right?
We do, we send the reports out every month, and we make notes, but
Still happens?
of course it happens. It happens in every town, every department.
Well, I understand that happens, but I just don't understand why we've got to kind of put things that are yearly operating expenses in capital, because if we don't, they're going to be, this money's going to be spent.
It's not that they will spend it, it's just that it takes the opportunity to spend it away. And that's the way that it was done prior to my arrival. And that's why, like, when you look at the general maintenance accounts, there's a maintenance account for fire and for highway, and, because that's where it was put. We can transition those back into the operating budgets. It's just,
I mean, it's the same thing with like
At this
police and the
point, it's-
tires. It's just,
At this point, it's better for us to keep them here.
and I don't want to, seem like that the departments are overspending, because when you look at their reports, you can see the variances. When I give you the detail on the annual budget, you can see the variances year to year, what they did last year, what they did this year. So they're not, I mean, they're spending the way that they say. It just, there was a decision made prior to my arrival that these were not going to be included in the general operating because they didn't want that ability to even exist, for whatever reason. Let's see, 6,500, again, cruiser maintenance and tires, that's all it can be spent on, it's a lot of tires. 7,000 to refurbish a 2000 GMC one-ton truck that they use to primarily plow out the police station and do any type of miscellaneous work that might be needed down there, so the highway doesn't have to come down all the time. Capital request for fire, 682,000. 15 for the maintenance and repair account, 12,000 for the replacement of 6 sets of turnout gear. And this is part of an annual program. What they used to do is request about 60,000 every 5 years. This just spreads it out so the equipment is aging, you know, it doesn't all fail at once. 550,000 for engine 2 replacement. So this is to replace a 1998 engine and a 2002 GMC rescue truck with one combination vehicle that will be designed to carry all the equipment. So it's part of their fleet reduction in that type of apparatus. 34,000 to replace engine 3, which is a brush truck with a 6-wheel ATV type vehicle with a trailer. Engine 3 would be auctioned as part of this. 12,000 for a brush skid unit to be used with one of the pickup vehicles that they have. It holds, you know, 125 gallons of water and the brush line. And in coordination with that, they're requesting 44,000 for a deputy chief's command vehicle. Again, a Ford Interceptor type. The truck that the deputy is using now would be used for the brush skid unit referenced above. So it's actually a fleet addition for this type of vehicle. And 15,000 to replace 3 thermal imaging cameras, which are working. They're just not updated, so if they fail, they can't repair them. They'll need to be replaced. Highway is requesting 381,000, major equipment and repair. 25,000 is for a Mack, 1999 Mack refurb for the frame rails that failed this year. So this got moved up in priority just this year. 150,000 to replace 1992 backhoe. It's actually replacing, they're going to replace one that's a little newer at the highway barn, and then they're going to take that one and move it to the transfer station, and then this is the 1992 at the transfer station. So they're kind of shifting the equipment around to be more useful. 66,000 for a mini excavator, which will replace a 1989 John Deere grader. 18,000 for a forklift, which would be a used forklift. It's in addition to the fleet, but it's a used piece of equipment.
He does get every mile out of these trucks, doesn't he, out of this
I mean, when you
equipment
look
in the
at the
highway
years,
department?
Yeah. 62,000 for a 1997 replacement for a mower. 9,000 for flatbed for one of the hook trucks. 17,000 for a mini sidewalk paver, which is, again, a new piece of equipment. It would allow the town to better repair sidewalks and maintain them. And 18,000 for a used road paver, which would allow some, not just the patchwork, but a little bit more expanded repairs as needed.
So Bonnie, are these have been prioritized by these different departments?
Yes.
Okay. So if you had to go through and, you're
Yes,
going to
you
have
could
to
put
go
a
through the
line,
line,
yeah.
you know.
You could put a
Okay,
line.
they've already, except for the school department, they're not prioritized.
Yes, that's where I'm going next.
Speaking of highway capital, any update on the plow that needs to be repaired?
The frame rails? Oh, the truck that got hit?
Yeah.
It's, the insurance adjuster is coming out tomorrow, so we're hoping that, I told Maya we need to, you know, fix this now, because it's a frontline piece of equipment.
Okay, and the light department obviously spent a lot of money putting new pole and all the supplies and people to put the power back together for the Boxborough line. Traditionally, they go after the insurance company of the person that took the pole out. Are we comfortable that whoever hit our truck is the insurance company they'll be able to go after, or?
I'm fairly confident. I mean, we just started the paperwork, but Maya has in hand all of the accident reports.
Okay.
So they know who hit who and at what sequence. So, you know, if it turns that one goes after the other, you know,
Okay, so
they'll go through the
my
sequence.
only reason for asking this is that the town is basically self-insured because we have a very high
Right.
deductible. So is the town likely to have to be on the hook for it? Or are you comfortable that, you know, our driver was, quote, not at fault?
Oh, our driver was, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay, so it's unlikely that the
It's
town will be on the hook?
very unlikely.
Okay, so it's unlikely that the town will be on the hook to pay the light department for the repairs they did?
Right.
Okay, great, thank you.
That was determined.
One question, Bonnie. The highway department has had a web-based inventory system of their roads and infrastructure, and,
They don't have a web-based one.
pardon me?
They don't. They have a software system that,
Software
yeah,
system.
it's outdated.
Right, but I think it was, the database was accessible through the web, or, anyway.
Okay.
Cloud,
But,
probably, yeah.
I don't know. I doubt it.
Is, are they gonna renew that, or do you know, is that gonna, part of this?
It's actually proposed as part of the roadway budget,
Okay,
in their budget request, in their mission budget,
okay,
to do that,
okay.
so. Because it would be an annual cost to maintain that and update it, and.
Right.
Wasn't there a discussion of whether this other software that we contracted for all the other maintenance, whether it could handle roads, whether it could accommodate
Yeah,
those
yeah,
or
no,
not?
we talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, I was on a conference call with EMG and Jim Clyde a few weeks ago, and the current system that they have with VHB is the system they need. EMG won't support it.
They don't do infrastructure, really, they do, you know,
buildings.
building
Yeah.
assets.
Just won't be- We needed to ask the question, that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
So in the school request, there's $613,000 being requested, $40,000 for Russell Street playground equipment, $30,000 for the high school locker replacements, $40,000 for the high school library video broadcast.
These the
room.
lockers that the kids trashed in the gym? Okay.
They're in the high school boys' locker room, is that where they
You hear
were?
about it at PMBC all the time.
All the time. Oh, yeah,
All the
very
time.
negatively.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
So they probably are.
okay.
$25,000 for fencing around the high school fields and dumpsters. $20,000 for handicapped accessible doors being addressed at the high school and Shaker Lane buildings. $25,000 for a card access system at Shaker Lane, and $50,000 for the same system at the high school. This one's a little different. I need to get some details on this, but it's $35,000 for a teacher laptop lease agreement. It's the second payment of a 3-year agreement. But we didn't appropriate anything like this last year, so they, no, it says that there's a second, it's very clear in the request that it's a second year, so it looks like the first year's payment might have been paid out of their operating. So I just note that
Yeah,
it's.
that's what was happening,
Yeah.
was the first one.
45,000 for Chromebook computers and equipment, 10,000 for MacBook Airs, replacements and additions, 10,000 for high school technology, replacement of technology equipment, 25,000 for system-wide technology equipment, which would include like cameras, TVs, broken projectors, 75,000 for parking lot lights to replace them through the system with LED lights, and the estimated return on investment was 28 months. 14,000 for replacement of the circulating pumps at the high school HVAC system, estimated return on investment 23 months. 6,000 for the freezers, the replacement of the evaporation motors and controllers, return on investment 28 months. 45,000 to retrofit a high school classroom for life skills. 15,000 to replace some carpet at Shaker Lane. 20,000 for custodial equipment, particularly floor care equipment in the maintenance lift. 27,000 for auto scrubbers at the high school and middle school. $24,000 for cafeteria equipment, 20 chairs and table sets at Russell Street. $20,000 to paint and make repairs at Russell Street, particularly the classroom doors and kick plates,
Building's just done.
and the gym walls. And then $12,500 to replace the basketball backboards at Russell Street. And again, these are not in priority order.
But Bonnie, I'm $20,000 to paint the repaint classroom. But Russell Street was just, how long has it been? It's only been a couple of years since.
Yeah,
It was
it
all
looks like
redone
it's the doors and the kick plates, which probably are, heavily used. I mean, I don't have much detail other than
But
what
it
I've.
says classroom and gym walls.
Yeah.
I just don't
Did they,
understand it so soon.
Did they fix the gym floor since wasn't there like an outside group that came in and trashed the floor and they wanted a $9,000 reserve fund transfer to
Yeah.
cover the cost of that?
The floor.
Wasn't the floor, right?
The
Yeah.
floor.
Yeah, the floor in the gym.
Right.
No, it was in the
No, it was in
cafeteria.
the
Oh, the
cafeteria.
cafeteria.
Middle school cafeteria.
It was when the COA had their wellness event.
Park and Rec is requesting 2 items.
Can we
Yeah.
stay with school?
Yeah.
We're going to have our PMBC meeting tomorrow, and Jeff gave me some add-ons to the spreadsheet I had put together, and he had $50,400 in for the high school paint interior walls,
Okay.
so I don't see that on here.
Nope.
So I'll take this list and
Okay.
look
Yeah,
at
this
it.
is the list that was submitted to the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen at the all-day budget hearing, Super Saturday.
Just as we run into this every once in a while, and I absolutely applaud people looking at an ROI. When, it was back when, I think Diane was here, they did the energy, they shut out the lights,
Yep.
change this, change that, and, they were saving $100,000+ a year, which then morphed into, their operating budget, which is fine. But here, they're asking for $95,000 worth of money that could be spent for other capital projects. And as the money gets saved, it will be within their budget because they won't be spending it. So that's freeing up over the next 2 years, $95,000 worth of spendable money
Right.
within the school budget, which is okay, but I think we should just be aware that, that.
Well,
by
if
the
it's
town-
saving on electricity, the town bills them for electricity, right? But, so the
Right.
electricity bills go down and they just spend it elsewhere, right?
Right.
Yeah, so, just keep it in the back of your
Sure.
mind that they, over the next 2 years, there'll be $95,000 that,
Right.
and they can spend it on good things, I'm sure, but it's something to keep in the.
It's the same thing I pointed out with retirement savings. Teacher leaves at 80 and new one comes in at 50. There's $30,000 per teacher that leaves that they're getting every year, and where does that go? Right in the operating account. And you never see that, yeah. So I think these are great things to point out. All the ins and the outs that are going on in the school department that, if no one points it out, it just, not to continue bashing on the school department, but again, just another example of savings that they realized that is never accounted for properly, and they just bank the money and on they go, so. And they're looking for $1.1 million, so.
Okay.
Park and Rec is requesting 2 items, $43,000 to do a feasibility study and design work to.
Excuse me, back on the schools, the
Yeah.
last slide on the schools, excuse me.
Yep,
At Russell Street,
yeah.
we're replacing 20 tables and chair sets. Wasn't that all new 4 years ago?
I would assume
I
that.
bet they did an extensive renovation, but I don't know if that was included.
We'd have to ask.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
I
something
just,
that
I just
we should
had
ask.
that question for them, and
Yep.
it's just, if they were all new, then why is it going belly up?
Most
for
of those little
4
kids can't even hit the backboard.
Okay. Alrighty. Park and Rec.
Park and Rec is requesting 2 items, $43,000 to do a feasibility study and some design work for the soccer field development This is the land swap deal, I think, the 2.5 acre parcel that Park and Rec gained behind the existing track. And they want to do the feasibility survey and design work to transform that into soccer field. 10,500 for facilities and ground maintenance. Last year, this was at, or this fiscal year, this was at 15,000. So I think they had some additional, repairs that they needed to do, but they've been able to identify that it would be about 10,500 for the next fiscal year. Library is just requesting one item. It's their annual recurring for furnishings to replace any worn or damaged furniture. They have a lot of upholstered furniture, and it gets, stained and dirty, and do that. Cemetery is requesting almost 61,000. Craig would like to replace a mower that he purchased in 2013 with a more efficient, more effective model. He would trade the 2013 mower in on this, and that's why the cost is so minimal. But he really feels that this one would do a better job with the type of work that he needs to do around the stones and everything.
He feels the one he has is dangerous.
Yeah.
On the hills.
Yeah.
Right. We reviewed this with him when
Yeah.
we sat down with him at budget
He did
time.
quite a bit of work on it.
Yeah.
I was proud of him. 25,000 for the HVAC system at the cemetery building. This was, further identified, I think, through the roof project as, something that,
It's the old rooftop unit up
yeah.
there. Yeah.
So it does need to be, addressed. 31,000 for backhoe repairs to refurbish the 1995 John Deere backhoe. He's taking Jimmy's lesson and refurbing, 20-year-old pieces of equipment, so that'll be good. And in the facility-related items, 783,000 in requests, but as you had pointed out earlier, there's 300,000, that's the Long Store reassembly, 50,000 in historic cemetery restoration, 427,000 has been earmarked for the PMBC facility study. This was the number that was mentioned at the Super Saturday day after discussion with the school committee item. So I don't have a breakout of these items yet, but
Oh, I do.
I know you were gonna. I knew you were working on them.
Well, I'll send them to you tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great. And then 6,000 for the fire station, the modular building lease, which needs to be done annually until it's done over. And other non-operating requests, we just have one item this year, which is for master planning services, 100,000 to add to the 113 that sits there today.
And the thought was that this was going to top out around 250?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think Paul is what we're
Yeah,
saying.
that's the last
Okay.
moving target number we had.
So, other pressures, just items that we need to keep our eyes on. The items identified in the facility study are not fully funded. They may be okay, but if there are failures or catastrophic events, then we're going to need to address them. Future building projects that are not on our horizon really firmly yet. The library, there's been discussion about senior centers or recreation buildings in the past. So those things do not really sit firmly in our plan at this point. The fire station is in the plan, funding for May of 2016's town meeting for design. So it's just not in this material. And again, just cautioning, if something happens, we're going to have to deal with it if we're not being proactive. So, I think we're making progress in doing that.
Very good.
That's what I have.
So you can go through and take your stab at, well, you gotta get the priorities from the school, but the other ones, okay, we're gonna draw the line here, here, and here to come with this number. But at what point do we say, that's not the number, we really wanna put so much money away for next year or for another time?
Well, the draft budget, or the draft capital funding scenario that I can present on the 26th can do that. It's a perfectly reasonable approach to it. It's a one-time
You think we should take
increase
that
in the
350
capital.
and recommend that go to the capital stabilization fund?
I think we should at least discuss it.
I'm in support of that.
I am too.
It's a good idea.
What did we do last year? 190 or something? What did we do last year?
No, not much at
Oh,
all.
God, no, we only put like,
What did we do one year? We cut off
First year-
the list of
what the capital, Paul actually.
Right, we had like 189,000, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, 189,000,
The first year.
Well, we
just
didn't
That was
put it
another
in
one of
budget
those
last year.
times we had that as a one-time funding. I mean, this is 350,000 that we're not gonna have next year.
But we know we get the capital projects coming down the pipe, so that's why we created that fund.
I think it fits within the financial policies very, very well. I think it,
And
good
what that will
planning.
do is that'll cut to 1.6 or so on that list. At what level of pain that would create, but I would think that it would be worth at least, discussing it. If we agree that it's a good thing to do, vote on it as our recommendation and take that forward to the selectmen, see if, where their heads are. But I would think that it's a fiscally prudent thing to do. That's why we put that in there.
And it's not like we would be leaving ourselves significantly underfunded to do other capital work. There's money there.
1.6, so a lot.
and we don't know what snow and ice money might be available, to supplement the capital in the fall. We can identify some priorities for that. And that might, I think, would be something that I would want to change about the process done last year versus this year. Present the plan for the Maytown meeting, and then have the list of items that, in a priority order, that could be funded in the fall if there's snow and ice money.
That would be the
That way,
appropriated
there's
thing to
no-
do, yeah.
If we get 100 in snow and ice, it's this. If we get 200 in snow and ice, it's that.
Right.
Or whatever. Or even some of the snow and ice could go
Right,
into
right.
reserve.
But I think having that list now, rather than,
The numbers have just got too big over the years to allow it just to be kind of random.
It helps to head off those pop-up projects too.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. As soon as, out there are people who figured out occasionally there's gonna be a couple $100,000 available late summer, early
Yeah.
fall. Right.
Regular town meeting in fall.
All right, so do we want to vote on this, and that we make a recommendation on this at this point, or not? Or we just tell you, and then we go to the next step?
Well, I
Voted.
I personally would like, if everybody's discussed what they feel they want to on it, I'd like to see us take a vote on it. And it's recommendation.
Right.
That's all, legally
Right.
all we can do, but I think it's,
I think it would be a helpful message for, the selectmen. I think they'd be receptive to
Yeah, if
having that
all-
information.
Ordinarily, I'd rather see Bonnie come up with their own list, but this is a somewhat unique item, and if all we're doing is recommending that, what you said, Fred, that money be dedicated to the capital stabilization for all the reasons we cited, fine. And then we're just recommending that you take that approach as you
Craft the
okay.
draft.
Come up with the next draft.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I'll
Right,
make
and
the
then-
Yeah, it's all a draft. I mean, it's,
I'll second it. How's that?
Okay, and then just to reiterate, to get money out of the capital stabilization fund, what is the process?
2/3 vote of town meeting.
So again, we would support, the selectmen would want to do something, or somebody else would want to do something, we would support it or not, and town meeting would vote. And
Okay.
it's a simple majority?
No,
No,
two-thirds.
2/3.
Two-thirds, okay, a two-thirds majority to come out.
Okay, so
2/3
what's your
in and
move-
2/3 out.
What's your motion then, Fred?
Okay, so I would move that the $350,000 of short-term debt savings be allocated to capital stabilization fund.
That we recommend that it be
Yeah,
allocated.
that we recommend that be allocated to the capital stabilization fund for use on future capital projects.
Was there a second?
Second.
Second the motion.
Oh, yeah.
Hello? Any discussion? Further
I
discussion?
Just want to get myself on track. So what did we cut off last year? I thought it was last year that we cut off.
No, it was the year before.
Was it the year before?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was the year before.
Last year, we put like 15,000 in, I think.
Yeah, that was-
You know,
All right, so
small
let's
amount.
see.
There was
We should have
some,
done better on
but
that.
it was minimal.
It was the 1% or whatever it was
Yeah,
that I
that's
I
what-
had to
what-
put in.
What the bare minimum was, we had to put it in, yeah. Well, this will help make up for that.
Right.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you. And that's all I have.
No, we don't have any transfer fund request? There aren't any, none of
There
them ever
was
came
one
through?
being discussed for the recreation, not recreation, conservation.
Right.
And that was withdrawn. They need to do a little bit more work. There's some additional information that needs to be done, but they might be able to support it out of their own account.
Okay. All right, minutes. You've seen the minutes from, Marilyn did get the minutes out from 11:15 from our All Super Saturday meeting.
Right. Those are the ones that tracked very nicely with this budget going down.
Yep. We do.
Move
It's amazing.
approval.
You went back in there on a couple things and said, yep, it was all there.
I thought I would never get it.
There was a lot there. Even the school, a lot of what they said was in that. But anyway, okay. So, motion for the 11:15 minutes?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then the meetings from 12:16, or the minutes from 12:16?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks for staying late.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? Oh, yeah, motion to adjourn, second.
I'll second.
Aye, okay, thank you.